Hi everyone, my name is Philip and today I would like to show you how to correctly animate a camera in three-dimensional environment. Keep in mind it's not only for Maya, it's general in 3D software. Okay, you can use it in Blender, Cinema 4D, 3ds Max and so on. Alright, so first we need to cover a correct approach to the camera animation, which is imitating a real world. This is a 3D. People mostly starting with a crazy movement because they can do everything. Okay, and this is a misconception. We want to have those limitations to speak the same language that professional filmmakers do in Hollywood productions. So here we have our 3D rig available for our students. So first thing that you need to know about correct composition is set up a resolution gate. Okay, here viewport section you have a setting that enables you to view the correct composition later on you will have in your render. Okay, so here you need to select this button, and in the rendering settings you need to make sure it's full HD or 4K, whatever resolution you want to have. Alright, so then let's talk about the type of the shots, because as a filmmaker you have several options to show your character. So here, this is the full shot. Okay, when we are showing entire character from head to toes. This is the medium shot. Okay, a little bit closer. Here, this is the medium shot, even closer. Okay, from above the waistline. And this is a medium close-up, so something below the shoulder line. And here is a close-up, actually even closer to the shoulders. Extreme close-up, we are really close to the character. Right, so each shot can have different purpose. Imagine like full shots, you want to focus not only on the character's face, but actually on the entire body. Okay, so for example, if character wants to portray certain body language, certain emotion through entire body, then you would like to show it probably from this angle. Also, if you want to showcase the environment, then this is highly recommended. Okay, and basically, if the closer you get to the character, the more emotion you want to sell. Okay, because our viewer will be closer and more connected with the character. Okay, so right now, for example, you don't really see the thought process of the character, but whenever we are close or even way closer, like this, then you see any wrinkle, any small movement in the facial. All right, so if, for example, if you want to portray some deep thought process, then probably you want to be really close. But most of the cases, probably if there is some just random conversation, then probably something like this will be enough. Alright, so we've covered already the type of the shots, and make sure to also use a different focal length, because mostly people are just using the 35mm length. This is the just basic setup in Maya here, and you change it here. Okay, so focal length 35. Larger number you get here, for example 50. You also getting closer to the character, right? So 100 for example, or 30. You will have, or like 25. You will have more distortion, more view like a GoPro camera. So each focal length has a different purpose, of course, and also it deforms a little bit the environment and the background and the character's face, and also it kind of shows the differently relation between environment and the character. So for example, if we have the more distorted environment, then we probably will have a lot of movement on the background, right? So whenever we are moving the camera, there's a lot of happening in the background. And if we want to showcase a character as much as natural as possible, then we probably use something 50 millimeters, because this is the closest value to our human eye distortion. Alright, so for example, you can also increase this number to 75 or something. This will create this feeling that, for example, environment is a little bit closer to our main character. Alright, so these are the things that you have to keep in mind when you are animating, and just make sure to stay away from 35, in my opinion, because it just creates this artificial feeling straight from Maya, okay? And you want to kind of add something from yourself, whether it's like a maybe more dynamic shot, then you want to probably decrease it, right, to 25. If you want to have some more cinematic feeling, then you can also increase this number to, for example, 70, right? Just make sure you have some choice, okay, and you put some artistic thought process behind it. Right, and frame composition. If we are talking about composition, and I will turn back this to 35, and you already might notice that when we change this, our character is not staying in the middle, okay, of the screen. So this is what you have to make sure you keep an eye on this, because it's also important. As a filmmaker, as an animator, you have to make sure you create a nice composition. Not only in foreground, but also it has to nicely blend with the background. So here we might notice that, okay, this character is a little bit, I don't like the empty space between the head and the corner of the edge of the image. So we might end up in something like this, okay? Make sure, you don't leave too much empty space like this, because empty space is also storytelling factor, let's say. It also brings some emotions to the viewer. You don't want to just focus on the objects, you have to also focus on how much space there is between edges of the images, edges of the frame, and your character, and so on. Right, so we've covered this, and let's move on to the height of the camera and the position of the camera, because this is actually pretty important in terms of the storytelling aspect, especially if you are working with the close-ups, for example, like this. Just by lowering the camera, you will bring a different kind of emotions. If you have lowered the camera and rotated upward, you have a different emotion in comparison to this, right? Here, for example, we have the camera a little bit actually on the eye line, something similar to the eye line. So if you want to create a connection to the character, then try to align the eye line of your subject to the camera, because then you are bringing the strongest connection. If you, for example, want to create some dominant feeling, then probably you want to see this from beyond. And if you want to create the, let's say, feeling of the strength, then we probably need to move it to the bottom. Okay, so it's like the rotation actually is a little bit different thing than translation. Translation is bringing the emotion value, and rotation is mostly about keeping the composition tight, okay, and correct. Okay, and the last subject that I would like to talk about is camera movement, because if you are working on the animation, you are actually a filmmaker, you're creating animated movies. And so make sure to also understand the cinema language. This is like the quick, let's say, blueprint that you can follow. I find it online, and this is how the correct naming convention for the camera movement should look like. Okay, so for example, let's move to Maya. So dolly is the movement forward, pedestal is like movement vertical, track is the movement on the side, pan is the rotation, horizontal rotation, tilt is the rotation vertically, and roll is like this. Okay, so you already probably noticed that roll is not something that we're going to use pretty often, So majority of the time you will actually use a pan, okay, and tilt. Okay, so right now let's talk about the camera movement and how to move it. As I mentioned at the beginning, people kind of get confused because they can do everything in 3D and we have to set up these limitations. So this is a good idea, I think, to add any camera movement, like just small camera movement to each shot, because it brings this additional value, okay, to your assignments. So if you are approaching to camera animation, make sure to think as a filmmaker, not as a 3D artist or like graphic designer. Filmmakers around the world tend to have some specific gear and camera language. Okay, so make sure whenever you are doing any movement in 3D that incorporates like some sort of thought process. So make sure, for example, when we tend to work in Ghost Recon, we kind of move the camera in a certain way. We try to imitate certain type of the cameras. So for example here, just make sure you're not moving camera like this. Just imagine, for example, a camera track, like a heavy camera track moving on the trails, and that's already brings some limitations to your workflow. Whenever you are moving the camera, make sure it moves, for example, just in one axis, or like this, or like this, or like this. Okay, this will help you to start. This is like a starting point. I would say, so camera on the rail, like as a starting point. Later on, for example, you can imagine that the cameraman is holding the camera like this, or on the gimbal on the line. Plenty of options. But as a starting point, I would create the limitations that whenever you have to move the camera, start from the rotation, okay, so from the pan. If you can't do enough, then you are starting to get translation, okay, because stay away from like just moving, translating the camera from like in two axes and then rotating it a little bit. Try to do the most of the work by rotation, and then if you really have to, just add one axis, okay, then you can do everything, then add another axis, like the vertical axis, and so on and so forth, okay. Make sure the camera work is smooth, because in the real world environment, like professional camera gear is pretty heavy. So stay away from abrupt, quick movements. Hopefully this video can help you understand how you should approach the camera animation, and hopefully you like this video. So if you do, then press the like button and subscribe, and see you in another episode. Right, bye.